"Call 911, now," the judge shouted, his voice shaking. It wasn't the kind of shout you hear in courtrooms, the stern, commanding kind. This one was frantic, urgent, the kind that turns every head and freezes every heart. It was the sound of someone who'd just realized something was horribly, horribly wrong. The girl sat in the chair next to her caseworker, her dark brown eyes staring at the floor. She was tiny, maybe 9 or 10, with braided hair tied neatly with purple beads. Her name was Mia. She had been in foster care for as long as anyone could remember. The courtroom was supposed to be the beginning of her new life, her fresh start. A couple sat across the room, nervous but smiling. They wanted to adopt Mia. They said they loved her already. But Mia hadn't spoken much to them in the time they'd spent together. She hadn't spoken much to anyone, really. That's why the judge leaned forward during the hearing and gently asked, "Mia, is there anything you'd like to say? Anything at all?" Her tiny hand clutched the edge of the table, knuckles turning white. For a long time, she said nothing. The courtroom waited in silence. Then, in a voice so soft it was almost a whisper, she said a single word. "Basement." The judge's face changed instantly. His smile vanished, replaced by something like horror. He stood up so fast his chair tipped over. "Call 911 now." Nobody moved for a second, stunned by the outburst. Then, chaos erupted. The bailiff reached for his radio. The court clerk grabbed her phone. The couple sitting across the room looked confused and a little scared. Mia didn't move. She didn't cry. She just stared down at her hands, quiet and still. Mia had been placed with this same couple months earlier as part of a trial adoption. Everything had seemed fine on paper. They were a well-off, church-going family. Their references checked out. The social worker who visited their home had said it was spotless, almost too perfect. But Mia had started acting differently after moving in. She became quieter, more withdrawn. She wouldn't eat unless someone told her she could. At night, she had nightmares so bad the other kids in her foster home could hear her screaming. The word basement was the first clue anyone had that something was wrong. It was all she said that day in court. But it was enough. When police arrived at the couple's house, they found a locked door in the basement. Behind it, they found a small windowless room with a dirty mattress on the floor and a bucket in the corner. Mia had been kept there for weeks at a time. She wasn't allowed to go to school. She wasn't allowed to play outside. The couple had told her it was because she was bad and needed to learn how to behave before they could love her. Mia was taken to the hospital that same day. The couple was arrested. The story made headlines for weeks. People couldn't believe could a couple that seemed so perfect hide something so monstrous. The judge who screamed that day later admitted he had seen something in Mia's eyes, something that reminded him of another case he'd handled years ago. It was a look of fear so deep it could only mean one thing: danger. Mia didn't go back to that courtroom after that. She didn't have to. Another family, a kind, patient one, stepped up to adopt her months later. It wasn't easy at first. Mia flinched at loud noises. She had trouble trusting adults. But little by little, she began to heal. One day, while sitting on the porch with her new mom, Mia said something that made her mom tear up. "I like it here," Mia said softly. "There's no basement." It was just a small sentence, but for Mia, it was everything. Her new mom, Carla, didn't ask any more questions that day. She had learned not to push. Mia spoke when she wanted to, and rushing her never worked. Instead, Carla reached over and placed a gentle hand on Mia's back, rubbing small, reassuring circles. "I'm glad you like it, sweetie," Carla said. "You're safe now, always." Mia didn't respond right away, but she leaned into Carla's touch. It was the first real sign of trust in weeks. Carla stayed quiet, letting Mia take her time. The early days in Carla and her husband Darnell's home were tough. Mia would panic if she heard the door to the basement creak open. Darnell eventually put a heavy-duty lock on the basement door, not to keep anyone in, but to make sure Mia knew no one would make her go down there. He even left the key on the kitchen counter, in plain sight, so she knew it wasn't a secret. Mia still didn't talk much. Carla had read every book about trauma in children that she could get her hands on, but nothing really prepared her for the heartbreaking moments that seemed to come out of nowhere. Like the time she found Mia sitting in the corner of her room, facing the wall, rocking herself back and forth. Carla had to fight back tears as she knelt beside her. "It's okay, baby," Carla said softly. "You're not in trouble. You don't have to hide." It took nearly an hour to coax Mia out of that corner, but when Carla finally wrapped her arms around her, Mia melted into her embrace, sobbing into Carla's shoulder. It was the first time she had ever let herself cry in front of them. Small victories came slowly but steadily. One evening, Carla made spaghetti for dinner, and Mia actually smiled just a little. "This is my favorite," she said in her quiet voice. It was the first time she'd ever mentioned liking something. Darnell nearly dropped his fork. He covered it quickly by saying, "Good choice, kiddo. Best spaghetti on the planet, right?" Mia nodded, a tiny grin tugging at the corner of her lips. Carla and Darnell exchanged a quick, tearful glance. They didn't make a big deal out of it, but later, after Mia had gone to bed, they high-fived in the kitchen like they'd just won the lottery. Over time, Mia started opening up about her past. Bits and pieces came out during quiet moments, like when Carla brushed her hair or sat with her while she colored. "They told me I wasn't good enough," Mia whispered one night. "That's why they put me in the basement, so I could think about how to be better." Carla's heart broke all over again, but she didn't show it. "They were wrong, Mia," she said firmly. "You are good enough. You've always been good enough. They were the ones who weren't." Mia didn't say anything, but later that night, she left one of her drawings on Carla's nightstand. It was a picture of their family, Carla, Darnell, and Maya holding hands in front of their house. By the time Mia turned 12, she had started to thrive. She joined the school art club and made a few friends. She laughed more often, a sound Carla once feared she'd never hear. There were still hard days, of course. Nightmares still came sometimes. Old fears still popped up unexpectedly. But Mia wasn't alone anymore. One evening, after dinner, Mia asked a question that Carla and Darnell had been waiting to hear for years. "Can I call you Mom and Dad?" she asked shyly. Carla felt her throat tighten, and Darnell wiped at his eyes with the back of his hand. "Of course, baby," Carla said, pulling Mia into a hug. "We'd be so proud if you did." Years later, Mia stood in the same courtroom where she had once said that single haunting word. Only this time, it was for a very different reason. She was 18 now, her hair styled in long twists, her eyes bright and confident. "I just wanted to say thank you," she told the judge who had saved her life all those years ago. "Because of you, I got a real family. And because of them, I finally know what love feels like." The judge smiled, his voice steady this time. "You didn't just find love, Mia. You taught us all what it means to fight for it." Mia left the courtroom that day with Carla and Darnell by her side, ready to face a world that once seemed so dark but now felt full of light. The years following Mia's emancipation brought growth, challenges, and triumphs she never imagined were possible. She had a dream that had been growing quietly in her heart, a dream that took root during one of those long, quiet nights in the basement. Back then, she used to imagine herself helping other kids like her. She wanted to make sure no one felt as lost and scared as she had. When Mia turned 22, she graduated college with a degree in social work. Carla and Darnell sat in the audience, beaming with pride. Darnell even shouted, "That's my baby girl!" when Mia crossed the stage, earning laughter and cheers from the crowd. During her speech as class valedictoriana, surprise even to her, Mia spoke from her heart. "I used to think no one cared about me," she said. "I thought I didn't matter. But someone cared enough to listen, and that changed everything. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Even the smallest act of kindness can save a life. And that's what I want to dedicate my life to doing, showing kids that they matter, no matter where they come from or what they've been through." Her words brought the audience to their feet. Carla and Darnell wiped their tears and clapped so hard their hands hurt. True to her word, Mia threw herself into her work. She became a social worker, specializing in child welfare and foster care. Her own experiences gave her a unique perspective. Kids trusted her because she understood what they couldn't always put into words. One day, Mia was assigned a case that brought back memories she thought she had left behind. A 9-year-old girl named Layla, with deep brown eyes and a shy demeanor, had been removed from a home under similar circumstances to Mia's past. Layla barely spoke during their first meeting, but Mia didn't push. She sat with the little girl in silence, offering quiet reassurance. When Layla finally spoke, her words hit Mia like a ton of bricks. "Do you think I'm bad? Is that why they didn't want me?" Mia knelt down so they were eye level, her voice steady and kind. "You're not bad, Layla. Hey there. If this story moved you, Don't forget to hit subscribe to join me for more powerful real-life stories that spark change and inspire strength. Together, we can explore stories of resilience, justice, and the moments that make a difference. Your support helps amplify voices that need to be heard, so let's grow this community of changemakers. Click subscribe now, and let's continue this journey together. You've never been bad. What happened to you wasn't your fault, and I'm going to make sure you find a home where you're loved the way you deserve. Tears welled up in Layla's eyes, but for the first time, she smiled just a little. That night, Mia sat with Carla and Darnell at the kitchen table, sharing the story of her day. "You did good, kiddo," Darnell said, squeezing her hand. "You're changing lives," Carla added, pride shining in her eyes. Mia smiled, though her voice was reflective. "It's weird," she said softly. "Sometimes I feel like I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for everything I went through. It's hard to think about, but maybe that pain happened for a reason, so I could do this." Darnell nodded, his deep voice steady. "It's what you always had in you, Mia. You're strong, baby. Stronger than they ever thought you'd be," Carla added, her voice full of love. "And now you're giving that strength to others. That's what makes you unstoppable." Mia's journey wasn't overhealing, wasn't a straight line, and the world didn't always make things easy for her. But every time she helped a child find their forever home, every time she saw hope bloom in a face that had known too much sorrow, she felt that light in her grow brighter. She had found her purpose, her voice, and her strength, and now she was passing it on to those who needed it most. Mia had once been the girl in the basement. Now, she was the one holding open the door to a brighter future for herself, and for so many others like her.